We just lived through a defining moment in the automotive space, an eclipse that marks the end of one era and the beginning of another. Like so many pivotal moments in history, its true significance might only be fully appreciated in hindsight. I believe that one day, enthusiasts will look back on the early 2020s as a turning point for the evolution of cars. This perspective isn't new to me. Nearly 4 years ago, I made a bold claim in a video titled, "Here is why new BMWs are now reliable." I focused on the straight six engine, a cornerstone of BMW's engineering legacy, and argued that it represented a turning point for reliability. At the time, the statement was met with skepticism, even pushback. But as the years have passed, the evidence has spoken for itself. Now, with that same conviction, I want to explore what this moment means for the future of enthusiasts and for projects like the one I'm sharing with you today. The G20 chassis was designed with versatility at its core. It's capable of supporting everything from diesel and gasoline engines to hybrids, mild hybrids, and fully electric drivetrains. That adaptability makes it a standout in automotive history. But the G20 is about more than what powers it. It embodies cutting-edge technology and safety, with features like laser headlights, intuitive infotainment, advanced digital displays, and level 2 autonomy. Still, the evolution of the G20 and modern cars as a whole didn't happen in a vacuum. Government mandates dictate what's available to enthusiasts, shaping the cars we love or sometimes loathe. At first glance, these regulations might seem restrictive, but they've also driven innovation to the heights we've never seen before. Along this arc of relentless progress, there are rare moments where everything clicks, and something emerges that's greater than the sum of its parts. The Gen 2 B58 is one of those moments. A creation so perfectly engineered, it feels almost mythical. This journey to the Gen 2 B58 didn't happen overnight. It began with the legendary N54 engine, a platform that helped build this channel and even today holds its own against the B58. When the N54 launched, BMW was pursuing efficiency, but there seemed to be little concern about integrating it into their new turbocharged offerings. The N54 omitted technologies like a mass airflow sensor and Valvetronic, focusing instead on robustness. Then came the N55, which reintroduced efficiency from the N52 like Valvetronic, but at the expense of the N54's ruggedness. It was a product of its time, built with cost of entry in mind. Expecting BMW to surpass the N54's robustness while also improving efficiency would have been unreasonable, until government mandates forced those expectations. The result was the Gen 1 B58, which drew heavily from BMW's diesel expertise, using robust head and block designs to help handle the high cylinder pressures required by modern emission standards. Enter the Gen 2 B58. By chance, or perhaps serendipity, it landed squarely in the bullseye of perfection. It refined the Gen 1 design with key updates, a 5,000 psi fuel system to mitigate low-speed pre-ignition, wider crank journals with coated bearings to help with start-stop requirements, and advanced split cooling to help optimize thermal efficiency. These improvements elevated the B58 to legendary status. And then came the Supra. Reintroduced after decades, featuring the Gen 2 B58, its return naturally brought unparalleled aftermarket support, further solidifying the B58's reputation. The 2020 M340i became a snapshot in time, a pure enthusiast spec, free of the mild hybrid system with an unlocked DME and traditional controls. It was the peak of the series, a testament to what BMW could achieve when everything aligned. You might ask, why swap out a perfectly good four-cylinder that made over 500 horsepower reliably for nearly 10,000 miles? Why go through all this effort for an engine that will make similar power? The answer is complex. Part of it is a challenge because it can be done, but more importantly, it's about sharing what's possible. If I have the platform to show how easily the swap can be achieved, I feel an obligation to put it out there for others to learn from and build upon. And yes, it's about something less tangible, the sound, the smoothness, the mystique of a straight six engine. The B58 isn't just another power plant, it's a masterpiece born from innovation, compromise, and sheer happenstance. As we move toward a future dominated by efficiency and electrification, the era of pure organic internal combustion engines with modern tech is coming to an end. The Gen 2 B58 represents the pinnacle of that era, a perfect balance of power, efficiency, and engineering ingenuity. This project celebrates that legacy, building a fully loaded G20 that combines the best of what BMW offered before the shift toward electrification and subscription-based features. It's a tribute to an extraordinary moment in automotive history, and I can't wait to share it with you. All right, here are the motors side by side. You can see the B46D on the left, from this angle, if you were to just look at the motor right there, pay attention to that, just look at the left motor. Now check out that angle. You wouldn't be able to tell them apart. Everything from that ear, the bolt pattern, the flex plate, all the rear wiring harness and everything, all identical. Even up around the front, fuel pump, bracket on the side, fuel pump, bracket on the side. That angle there to that angle there, they're basically the same motor. It's just missing a couple cylinders. Here's how much bigger the 6-cylinder is. And this was configured with all the coolant lines to drop in the car now. And for the people saying this was just a waste of time, you should have just bought an M340i. Don't forget that this is the high compression motor, 2-port, smaller inlet on the turbo, more exhaust velocity, designed for just a really punchy throttle response. And they can still make 800 horsepower. Alright, I'd like to talk about the torque converter. The transmission is identical between a B58 and B48 or B46D, but if you look at the plate on the front of the torque converter, it's relatively flat on the 4-cylinder, whereas it's more dished on a B58. This is a larger torque converter compared to the B58. It's designed for more torque multiplication, given you have to make the most out of less torque out of a 4-cylinder. So I am going to run this because it's about 20% larger, probably has a larger internal clutch as well. Because the whole theme of this build is to make the most out of torque, that's why I selected the 11-to-1 high compression variant of the B58. The flex plates are identical, so it'll bolt right up to it perfectly, even though the torque converters are different. So now that we've set the stage, let's talk about what makes my build stand out. The 2020 M340i was undoubtedly the inspiration, but I didn't just replicate it. I built something unique, tailored not just to the G20 platform, but to my own vision of what the car could be. And that brings us to the heart of the project, the 2-port variant of the Gen 2 B58. Most enthusiasts associate the Gen 2 B58 with the 6-port head, but the 2-port engine is an entirely different beast. Originally designed for heavier vehicles like the X7, it features a coolant-filled exhaust manifold to handle sustained loads and high temperatures. That might seem like a compromise for performance, but in reality, it offers a unique advantage. It keeps exhaust temperatures in check, which is especially useful when pushing the engine hard on pump gas or ethanol blends. Pair that with this higher 11-to-1 compression ratio compared to the M340i's 10.2-to-1, and you get an engine that's incredibly efficient and responsive even at low RPMs. But this project isn't just about the engine. One of the more subtle yet critical choices I made was to use the torque converter from the B46D, which is the factory converter that comes on a 330i. On paper, that might not seem like a big deal, but let me explain why it matters. The torque converter in the B46D is larger and offers about 20% more torque multiplication compared to the one used in the M340i. What does that mean in practice? It means sharper, more immediate acceleration off the line, and smoother power delivery in daily driving. Think of it as adding a layer of refinement and performance that you wouldn't typically expect from a car like this. It's a small change, but it transforms how the car feels. More aggressive when you want it to be, but also more composed when you don't. So why didn't I just stick to the blueprint of a 2020 M340i? Why go with the 2-port B58 and a different torque converter? The answer is twofold. First, I wanted to build something unique, a car that embodies the best of what BMW offers while adding my own interpretation. And second, I saw the potential for these different components to create something even better. The 2-port engine, for example, has a reputation for durability thanks to its design origins in heavier vehicles. Its higher compression ratio not only boosts efficiency, but also makes it more suited to running ethanol blends like E30 or E50. Combined with the larger torque converter, this setup delivers a more linear and predictable power curve, a key factor when you're putting down over 500 horsepower to the rear wheels. It's not just about raw numbers, it's about how the car feels in every driving scenario, whether you're launching off the line or cruising on the highway. Of course, building something different means solving challenges that the factory never had to consider. One of the trickiest parts of this project was ensuring that the drivetrain and electronic systems worked seamlessly together. BMW's ZF8HP51 transmission, for instance, is incredibly capable, but requires precise tuning to accommodate the higher torque multiplication of the B46D converter. The larger converter also changes how the car behaves in kickdown scenarios, where the transmission needs to downshift and deliver instant acceleration. Adjusting the software to handle these nuances was critical to making the car feel cohesive. Thankfully, we have XHP and very advanced adaptation algorithms. Another factor was the cooling system. The 2-port B58's integrated exhaust manifold places additional demands on the coolant circuit, especially when paired with higher ethanol content. To address this, I made sure the cooling system was optimized for both high-load situations and daily driving, leveraging the split cooling system. That's one of the Gen 2 B58's hallmark features. This setup allows the block to run hotter for efficiency while keeping the head cool to avoid knock or pre-ignition at higher boost levels. Retrofitting auxiliary coolers help mitigate that issue. In the end, this isn't just a 2020 M340i with a 2-port engine. It's something entirely different. By blending the durability and efficiency of the 2-port B58 with the precision and performance of the G20 chassis, I created a car that's incredibly responsive and engaging to drive. The larger torque converter gives it sharper acceleration and a more aggressive throttle response, which I personally love. But I'll admit, this setup might be a bit too extreme for the mass market. The throttle response is tuned to feel immediate, almost raw, which wouldn't suit all preferences. BMW naturally designs cars to appeal to a wide range of drivers, balancing performance with comfort. My build leans heavily toward the enthusiast experience, prioritizing engagement over everyday practicality. What's interesting though, is that for anyone looking to replicate this build, the 2-port B58 engine offers a surprising advantage: availability. It's more of a mass market variant, found in heavier vehicles like the X7 and some international models, which makes it easier to source and often cheaper compared to the 6-port version in the M340i. That makes this build not just unique, but more accessible for enthusiasts who want to explore the potential of the G20 chassis without breaking the bank. As enthusiasts, we live in a time of transition, a time when efficiency and government regulations are reshaping the automotive landscape. The Gen 3 B58, while I'm thankful it exists, leans heavily toward this new era. It introduces advanced features like cylinder deactivation, a more complex mild hybrid system, and incredibly locked down DMEs, making it challenging for enthusiasts to modify or unlock its full potential. It feels like the Gen 3 B58, while a marvel of engineering, has stepped away from that sweet spot that the Gen 2 hit so perfectly. That's why I wanted to celebrate the Gen 2 B58, the bullseye version of this engine that came about almost by chance. It's rare for all the stars to align like they did, delivering an engine that balances power, efficiency, and enthusiast appeal so perfectly. And as we look ahead, there are changes on the horizon, like the discontinuation of the Mark V Supra. Rumors suggest Toyota may carry forward its spirit with the Mark VI Supra, but albeit with a 2-liter engine, showing where the industry might be headed. For me, that's a bittersweet reminder of why I built this car. Yes, it's surprising that you can push a 2-liter engine as far as I did, and everything that made the Gen 2 B58 special is what made that possible, but it also feels like a glimpse of the future, a future where smaller, efficient engines dominate, even as enthusiasts like us hold on to the magic of the straight six. We're in uncertain times. Electric vehicles, once seen as the inevitable future, are meeting resistance from customers who aren't fully ready to let go of the internal combustion engine. Manufacturers are scrambling to adopt to what people truly want. BMW, in my opinion, has been ahead of the curve. While other brands declared their commitment to going fully electric, BMW made it clear they wouldn't abandon ICE vehicles anytime soon. They're continuing to develop them, and the Gen 3 B58 is proof of that commitment. All right, here's the official first start. It's like 10-15% throttle. I'll put it in sport. It's very bassy. Back to comfort. Pretty quiet when you're just driving normally. Alright, so I've put a few hundred miles on the car. I've been enjoying it thoroughly. So I found out something interesting when I got the car running. This is a mass airflow sensor. Came off the 4-cylinder. This plug connected right to it, but it turns out this is just an air intake temperature sensor and it's not a MAF sensor. So it bolts right into the stock air box for the 4-cylinder, but it was giving me an error because of that. What that means is this is just designed for pure efficiency under normal driving conditions. That's why it has a mass airflow. And then when they made the high performance variant, I'm not sure if some B58s ran a MAF, but on the M340i specifically, it just has the air intake temperature sensor. And it's not really geared toward efficiency. So because of the mass airflow, it indicates that they're trying to go for ultra low emissions on this. And given this is a 330i engine, this engine was designed to give you as much efficiency as possible, probably to help bring down the total miles per gallon fleet average for all BMWs because they sell a ton of these 330i's. Keeping that in mind, if this thing is designed for efficiency, that means in comfort mode, they're going to maximize the output in terms of CO2 and fuel economy. What that means is the car is going to feel slightly sluggish at times in comfort mode. That was my chief complaint with the 4-cylinder. This engine makes crazy torque for a 4-cylinder. For what it is, it was still really impressive how it would pull off the line in comfort mode. But this thing, as soon as you give it about 10-15% throttle, it just wants to kick down. The transmission's getting the signal from the DME, kick down a couple gears because you're even slightly thinking about getting on things in comfort mode. My engine was making all the torque it would have needed to make it feel perfect. If it would run the same algorithm in terms of how it commands the transmission, and if maybe it ditched the mass airflow and just had an air intake temp sensor, I see some variants of the B4060, depending on the country, just run a similar sensor. Expecting the Gen 3 to deliver the same enthusiast experience as the Gen 2 is a tall order. Features like cylinder deactivation, while promising in theory, introduce challenges. For example, the valve train required to make cylinder deactivation possible adds complexity, and the remaining cylinders take on additional pressure when the system activates. Even with these advancements, it's hard to imagine the Gen 3 delivering the same raw power and simplicity that made the Gen 2 such a legend. That said, I'm optimistic. If perfected, cylinder deactivation could make 6-cylinder engines more efficient than today's 4-cylinders, without sacrificing performance. In fact, my swapped G20 running a Gen 2 B58 already delivers fuel economy comparable to the original 4-cylinder under many circumstances. It's proof that efficiency and power don't have to be mutually exclusive. This build is my way of celebrating what I believe to be the pinnacle of the B58's evolution. It's a tribute to that perfect balance of power, efficiency, and simplicity that, by some combination of design and serendipity, BMW delivered in the Gen 2. And while the future of the straight six might look different, I'm thankful we've had engines like this to inspire us. The Gen 2 B58 represents a moment in time, a brief window where government mandates, engineering ingenuity, and enthusiast demands converge to create something truly special. And even as we move towards smaller engines and new technologies, the spirit of the Gen 2 B58 lives on. It's the reason I was able to push my original 4-cylinder so far, and it's why this swap makes so much sense. This car is more than just a project, it's a celebration of everything that made that era of internal engine combustion so extraordinary. For the people that watched to the end, thank you. For anybody that was watching hoping to be able to replicate this build, and they only just got a sense of what's involved, know that ultimately putting in the 6-cylinder wasn't really any more work than the 4-cylinder. Sure, it was a little tighter near the front as I was trying to get everything in position, but the amount of labor involved to be able to remove the 4-cylinder and install the 6-cylinder was similar to just replacing the 4-cylinder anyway. I'll be putting up a summary video where I talk about everything involved from start to finish, including all the costs. More of an informative video if you guys want to follow along and potentially replicate what I did here. Thank you for watching.